Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, most unusually, I'm going to point out how someone I actually think is a force for good in broadcast journalism, Susanna Reid, actually lied about immigration today in what was a distorted telling of history and deflection. What she said, a lot of people are going to agree with. I'm going to show you the clip, and I think you're going to agree with what she says. But she was lying. And I think she was genuinely trying to make the positive case for immigration that she was discussing, but she did it in a way which deliberately hid the real reason people have an excessively negative view of immigration, and as such, isn't actually helping. But first, for daily political commentary, please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out. So yeah, I absolutely didn't have this one on my agenda, having a pop at Susanna Reid. I think she's, and it unfortunately is an all too rare example of someone who genuinely seems to want to hold politicians to account of different parties without fear or favour. And if all other broadcast journalists were like her, we'd be in a much better position. However, today, when trying to rail against the negative perceptions of immigration, she said something that was both untrue and also, much more serious, in my view, unhelpful deflection. So this is what she said.
Successive governments have failed to tell a positive story on immigration. We rely on immigration to run our public services, to grow our economy. But there is huge concern about how we support the immigrants who come. And, with all due respect to Chris Philp, how he can lecture the current government on immigration when it was under the previous government, that it went up, legal net migration went up to almost 1 million in the year to June 2023 is kind of remarkable, because anybody is going to be worried that if you have that scale of legal migrants coming in, how are you going to support them in the NHS? How are you going to support them with housing? And I think what governments need to do is say, we need migrants. They are positive and valuable contributors to our society. But this is the number roughly we need.
Now, I'm sure a lot of you will agree with every word of that. Governments are failing to tell a positive story on immigration. We do rely on immigration for things that she explains. And the inference is also true. If we artificially throttle immigration, as the Tories did last Parliament, then we harm both public services and the economy. So what on earth am I having a pop at? Well, two things. First, what she said of successive governments not telling a positive story on immigration is powerfully untrue. It's been a while, granted, but it is fundamentally a lie. 20 years ago, against a rising anti-immigration narrative, Tony Blair had to accept that people had concerns about immigration levels. So he gave a speech in which he explained the benefits we derive from it. He said that we had huge vacancies in the job market and that for a strong and growing economy, we needed migration to fill those vacancies. Those were his words. He further said that the migration of people is and always has been essential to our economy. He said that those who come to this country make a huge contribution, particularly, he said, to public services.
Subject, I have to say, it's one of those subjects where when you tell your senior civil service that you're about to make a speech on a subject like immigration, they say, what a courageous move, Prime Minister. But there it is. Anyway, here goes. Immigration and politics do not make easy bedfellows. They never have. We need few reminders of what can happen when the politics of immigration gets out of hand. And let us also be very clear that those who warned of disaster back in the 1960s and 1970s if migration was not stopped, who said Britain would never accept or be a multiracial society, have been proved comprehensively wrong. And beneath the surface, I think we all know as politicians, certainly on the centre-left, what we fear, that concern slips into prejudice and becomes racism. But we cannot simply dismiss any concern about immigration as racism. One, a recognition of the benefits that controlled migration brings, not just to the economy, but to delivering the public and private services on which we rely. Fifthly, we must celebrate the major achievements of migrants in this country and the success of our uniquely British model of diversity. For too often the debate about immigration is characterised by a vacuum of reliable information, which can all too easily be filled by myth. To give just one example, a recent Moray poll found that people estimate the proportion of ethnic minorities in Britain as 23%, when the real figure is a third of that, around 8%. So fact one, the movement of people and labour into and out of the UK is and always has been absolutely central to our economy. Visitors from outside the European Union spend almost £7 billion a year, and those from within the European Union, billions more.
So Tony Blair, someone who ran our government for 10 years, said all the things that Reid is claiming successive governments failed to say. And Blair said all this at a time when he was having to acknowledge that the public were becoming concerned by immigration levels, led by, the likes of what we would now say Nigel Farage's crew. He made these statements at the point at which cautious politics will dictate you dial it down a bit, right? The old pro-immigration lines, right? Because the public aren't buying it. Now, you can say that the Tories were certainly not telling a positive story on immigration ever. You can say even Labour now are not exactly shouting it from the rooftops either. But to say that successive governments failed to tell this positive story is a complete lie. And I do not think that progressive causes are helped by telling lies. There are some things I think we should learn from the more successful regressive campaigns, but lying to the public I do not think is one of them. But I'm not going to have a rant about a little lie like that. After all, it's been years since the government did stand up and shout that positive story about immigration. Her untruth doesn't detract from her main point, which brings me to her main point. It is surely that the reason people have this negative view of immigration is because governments aren't telling that positive story, which we can at least agree they haven't done for a good 14 years. But the inference is untrue as well. Give you a couple of examples. So first of all, I've just described how the previous Labour government stood up even against public concerns about immigration levels and said, this is actually in our interests. Very clearly explained it in detail, didn't shy away from it. This is why it's in our interests. Did public concern about immigration levels subside after he'd said that? No, they did not. Another example. So if we fast forward to the current Labour government under Starmer, I mean, they're not shouting about the benefits of immigration, but they are shouting about the benefits of low carbon energy. They've done that for some years. So are the public all positive about Labour's energy plans? Well, some are, but those tend to be the people who were before Labour started pushing the message. A lot of people have concerns. I've known this, just out and about with real people. I get comments about concerns on videos, which are powerfully unscientific. But they still have these concerns. Why? Because it makes no difference what a government says. If the media want to present a different message to the public, they will drown out the government. Think about it from the public's point of view, right? The government are one voice. That's like one political party. That's one person speaking, right? Ranged against what looks like a varied media. Oh, but they're saying this and they're saying this and this there. All these different outlets all look like different news outlets, all these different opinions. They don't know they're all controlled by like 3 billionaires. The public will just see that one lone voice telling them that everyone else is wrong. This is not to give politicians a free pass, by the way. I think they should do more to counter disinformation. But I think the best way they can do that is not so much in saying something different, because nobody hears it if the media don't want people to hear it, but by reforming the media. What Reid was doing, with good intentions, I'm sure, was deflecting blame away from the real reason people have a negative view of immigration. Like recently, GB News reports just, shown that they have published an overwhelming, a staggering number of anti-Muslim stories on their channel. They're really pushing it. In more legacy media, they're, to a lesser extent, they're constantly reporting, for crimes committed by a migrant, that's on the front page every single time. They never publish anything about the positive contributions that the vast majority make. And when was the last time you saw a mainstream news story explaining that migrants actually commit crimes at a lower rate than native Britons? The mainstream media are responsible for all of this. And it actually does gall me when I hear a representative of that cesspit albeit not one who's personally guilty, but still, she represents the media and she's throwing blame elsewhere. If Reid was really wanting to correct the imbalance of narrative around immigration, she'd be pointing the finger squarely at her own industry. She'd be calling on the government to do something about her industry. And if the government are guilty of anything in this regard, it is allowing her industry to lie to the public in the most brazen manner. Because any government that really puts country first would not allow the country to be lied to. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, please click the like button and subscribe for further content. If you'd like to support the channel further, you can click the join button for memberships. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.